So should elite sport be allowed to go ahead during the pandemic? We're joined now by West End star Marisha Wallace, who said sports should sit it out like the rest of us, and former England rugby player and sports pundit Ugo Monye, who believes sport is actually encouraging people to stay safe at home. Good to see both of you this morning. I mean, Marisha, you've just heard Nick talking about actually the prospect of the Australian Open happening on Monday, 30,000 people in the stadiums. That's certainly not happening over here in the UK. But the idea of the lift that will give people all over the world, because they'll be able to see this top-class sport happening, is not something we can ignore, can we?
No, we can't ignore the fact that it's going to open up, for more events. But I think we also have to be very careful. All the industries have taken a huge hit. I consider sports entertainment as well. I'm in the entertainment industry, and of course we want to be back on stage, and of course we want to be back with our fans. But I think it's pretty scary to have 30,000 people in the stadium each day. That's going to be 360,000 people. How are you going to control the virus? How can you control the behavior of 360,000 people? I think it could be a recipe for disaster. And I think maybe I don't want them to stop, but I think we maybe should take our time and ease our way back into these big events.
So clearly in Australia, Marisha, they have the capacity to have fans at those events, at that sporting event. We have the Six Nations. I know a tournament that Ugo will be fully involved with and enjoying this weekend, as will I. We have no spectators here with our top-flight sport at the moment. Do you feel that our top-flight sport is getting a pass here, though, as well? And even without fans, it shouldn't be going ahead?
Well, I don't know, because I feel like it's not just the athletes who need to be tested. There's a whole bunch of people who bring these events together. Yeah. All the essential workers who have to open the gates, the people who have to clean the locker rooms, the people, because it's usually the security guards or the people just working at the hotel, like in Melbourne.
And all of those people are being tested, though, aren't they? They're in bubbles, and the sports and the sports bodies are paying for all of that to happen.
Well, that's good, but I mean, how can you watch people for 24 hours a day? I just don't know if that's possible.
Well, Ugo, let's come to you now, because, Marisha's there's got safety concerns about, the events with fans because of the number of people that will be there and not being able to control the virus. Also, safety concerns, even if there aren't fans, because there are a lot of people that have to be there and obviously mix together to put on an event like that. Is it worth the risk?
Absolutely. I think it's worth considering the amount of funding and the strict protocols that absolutely everyone has to adhere to see any of these tournaments going on. The Six Nations starts this weekend, and there's been tens of millions of pounds been spent in football, in rugby, and all elite sport for it to be up and going. I hear what Marisha's saying in terms of security guards and everyone else. Indeed, when you're on site, you have to, for me, so tomorrow I'll turn up at Twickenham, thermogenic test, I have to fill out a COVID protocol, I have to have a negative test before I'm even on site. So there isn't an additional risk. For me, that's a mindset. You've also got to understand the role which elite sport's playing at the moment. So we've got the Six Nations starting tomorrow. Over 30 million people will be watching rugby from their home. 30 million people. And that's the effect, because the matches are on. I know sports will never cure COVID, but sport's always been an outlet for people who've had a bad week or whatever, just to be able to forget about it. It's almost defining your weekend, be able to sit at home with your family. And if by having elite sport on, we're keeping people at home, which is the strong message from the government, then I think there's every reason why elite sport should be continuing.
That's quite an compelling argument, isn't it, Marisha? 30 million people who won't be outside, who won't be mixing beyond their families because they'll be sitting enjoying the sport on the television.
Yeah, well, I think that's great. But look at all the other industries. Look at music. Look at theater. Look at Glastonbury, which has been canceled. It just makes you feel like when you're in the other industries, like, well, does anyone care about our industry as well? I mean, we've all taken a hit. We've all put a lot of money into putting things on as well. But we've all had to take a step back because the pandemic is at the forefront. And I understand sports is amazing. We want to have that entertainment, but we also have to be safe.
So, Marisha, I'd love to see you out performing what you can do, but your argument is that I'm not allowed to do it. Why should you? That doesn't really stack up. The fact is that every decision which has been made with the intention of not putting the NHS under any further stress, the millions of pounds that have been spent in, the protocols, the bubbles which they're living in. And we're just focusing on the top end. We're talking about the athletes, the sports people. But the freelancers that work in the sports and the media world, they've had absolutely no support from the government. So we take sport away, they've got no support from the government. They're left to fend for themselves. It's, it's unprecedented times. It's like the time that no one's ever been. And we're never going to be able to find a solution which is totally satisfactory to anyone. But the other option is that we don't have any sport, that we don't have any entertainment, and we allow people to get up and do whatever they want to do. By having this sense of moderation, which is strict and stringent and very draconian, I think we're able to be able to bring some joy to people's house. I'm going to be sat at home tomorrow watching England get Scotland. I'll be loving it, cheering it. And I'll tell you what, in a moment whilst everyone's suffering just a little bit, how great is it that we can just take our minds off the worries of the world and focus on other things that unite families and countries together.
Yeah, OK, well, listen, we've got to leave it there. But Ugo and Marisha, thanks very much for joining us this morning. And, let's hope in that case that sport, and as it's put on successfully that way, will pave the way for other industries returning in a similar way so we can see you back performing as well, Marisha. Thanks both very much.